gazillionth keynote of the day. We've had an amazing day of keynotes, and I am so honored to have Nikos here because I first saw him at, I think, a Classroom Connect conference, if anybody remembers those in the States, a gazillion years ago. And he was talking about his work, and I went out and immediately bought his book, The Director in the Classroom, which very cleverly came in a can, a film canister. And I still have it somewhere. It's buried in a box in my garage right now because I moved last year and haven't unpacked things. But anyway, I'm so happy to have him here and learn about his work. He joined the Global Education Collaborative a couple weeks ago, and I said, oh, you need to keynote our conference because your work is so fabulous. And I'm interested in catching up with him and seeing what's new, and I think you're going to enjoy his presentation. As you may have noticed, there's been a theme, kind of a filmmaking theme throughout the conference, and it hasn't been particularly intentional. But I'm glad it's happened. And two things are coming up that I want to bring your attention to before we start today, and that is that we have two films that are done by other directors that are available for virtual screenings, and they are free for this week on Vimeo, and you can watch online if you have a decent bandwidth connection. The directors of these movies, these documentaries, will be, I think, appearing on Thursday at the conference. So if you have the opportunity between now and midnight Friday Central Time in the U.S., try to get a look at these films, because I think they'll build nicely on the work that you're going to be listening to today with Nikos. So before the other thing that we need to do is we need to move on to our thank you to our sponsors. First of all, Iron USA and Brain Pop, Black Classroom Project, Little Lives, Big Dreams, of course, Blackboard Collaborate, and TechSmith. We really appreciate their support of this event. So make sure that you check them out. And then, of course, we have to do the famous math activity. Everybody has whiteboard privileges and can use the little star tool to the left of your whiteboard to indicate where you are viewing us from. You just click maybe twice and put your location on the map with that tool. And in the chat, we'd love for you to say where you are. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, in the U.S. And I see that we've got some people. We've got people all over, don't we? And I can tell where Nikos is. Oh, look, somebody's way up north in Canada. This is great. Very exciting to see. Okay, so welcome to our next keynote. And, oh, Zurich, Switzerland, yay. And we would love to, we hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'm sure Nikos has a lot to say. He's got a lot of slides. And we will have some Q&A hopefully at the end. So take it away.
Okay. So just a quick little audio check. You can hear me? I'm calling from here, from the letter A. And I am very delighted to be here, and it's great, Lucy, that we just happened to meet again last month and could be here to share. And I just love this whole idea that there's this 5-day conference going on around the world. People are sharing ideas, and I'm at my kitchen table, and I'm not getting on a plane, leaving my family and going somewhere to still share ideas, which is ultimately what conferences are all about. So this is so fun, so cool. This morning I listened to a couple of keynotes already, and it was great. So again, congratulations to you and Steve and all your crew to put it together, and congratulations to all the people who are participating here. Okay, let's go. I am not an expert on filmmaking in the classroom, but I am a curious guy, and for many years I've been curious about this overlap between filmmaking and learning, and also for many years curious about the potential of students creating media to explore and to understand and to create change in the world. And so in the context of this week's Global Education Conference, my thoughts are to share some ideas on how filmmaking in the classroom can be a vehicle, or is a vehicle, for stimulating global awareness in education. And I mean this idea of stimulating awareness of a student's world in the world of the word of world, as in their personal world, their community world, their family, and of course the global world. So my background actually is in filmmaking. And as a filmmaker, I've worked as a editor and cameraman and assistant director and producer, a very lousy actor, and all different areas. But my focus has been on the production process, and which is like a magic flow that happens when you take something that does not exist, it's something that's in your head, and you bring it to life. And for me, this is what making movies is all about, this idea of taking an idea and making it something that you can share, something that is tangible. So, because I'm curious, and because I'm also a father, these are my two daughters, I've also often wondered, what kind of world will my two daughters, Sophia and Matthew. I keep wondering, I've wondered, of course, since I took them to school the first day, what kind of world will they graduate into? And how am I preparing them as a father for that world that they're going to have when I'm no longer driving them anywhere? And how is this place I'm taking them to, this school, equipping them for their world in the future? And, intuitively, I know that the world is changing. I know that things are rapidly morphing in front of our faces. But what does this mean to my children? What does this mean to me as a father? And how do I explore what I could do as a dad to help them prepare for that world? So over the years, I've been interested in this. And, lately, there's definitely been a lot of discussion on the importance of preparing our children and preparing students for what people are calling 21st century skills. But, what exactly does that mean? Lots of thoughts and descriptions of it. The thing to do is to stop right now and to ask yourselves as audience, participants here, what skills do you think our children will need? And based on what you're seeing right now of a changing world that you live in, even forgetting about your role in education, but just as a role of a person working and living in this 21st century. What skills do you see? Here is curiosity. I think is a fantastic skill that is absolutely important. Someone else. We don't know what the world will be like in the future, but we can try to equip them as best we can. I agree. It's a moving target we're aiming at. The key is their world. Hello, exactly, not our world, or our parents' world, or my grandfather's world. Innovation and passion. Critical thinking, absolutely. Finding solutions, strong sense of self, open expression. These are all absolutely ring true for me. The ability to listen with open minds. Absolutely. Self-directed and self-managed. Well, you see, again, this is the thing, is that, and we were talking with one of the participants, Dimitri, here earlier, like in my grandfather's time, who lived on the island of Crete, they didn't have to adapt too much to their skill set to survive as a shepherd. The sheep pretty much stay the same, their whole lives and what they did and what they fed them. But, the world is changing. So all these skills that you have mentioned, I believe, and I agree, are critical to what they will need in their world, not so much in mine, really not a lot in my grandfather's time. So one of the organizations I really love paying attention to is the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. And just out of curiosity, if you want to just raise your hand on the chat there, raise your hand if you heard of the 21st Century Skills Partnership. Lovely. Okay. Good. So excellent. So a lot of people are aware of it. And I think the reason that I'm so interested in them is because of their clarity of their suggestions of what kind of student outcomes might be needed for the 21st century. And this idea of life and career skills, innovation skills, information, media, technology skills. Now, breaking them down, here's what the P21 people sort of articulate as skills. And if you notice, a lot of the skills that you yourselves wrote down in this chat just now find themselves in this box here. And things like critical thinking and problem solving, creativity and innovation, communication, collaboration, information literacy, media literacy, ICT literacy, flexibility and adaptability, initiative and self-direction, social and cross-cultural, productivity and accountability, leadership and responsibility. So, according to this organization and to the people that they work with, which is a very varied bunch, these are some of the skills that they've identified that we would like to aim our learning towards, or aim our instruction towards, so that the students who graduate, so that our children who graduate have these skills in order to be flexible and to adapt and to survive and have meaningful lives in their lifetimes. So for my daughters, what I notice for them is that when they are in school, that they get excited about learning when their learning is about something real. And they want their learning to be relevant. They want their learning to have meaning, about real life, and to see how this relates to the real world. So again, let's just pause for a second. And in your experiences in working with students, when do your students get excited about learning? Just take a moment there to throw something there in the box. Culturally relevant. When it is hands-on. Yes. When other things you mentioned exist. When they have some freedom of choice. Yes. Discovery. When they have a voice in what they'll be learning. Yes. And I think this is true for, when we went to school, or when you went to school, did you not also find that when you were excited about learning that these same characteristics, applied? And so we know what gets students excited about learning, but it seems to be these obstacles, difficulties to get learning moving towards that direction that opens up the brain waves and opens up the heart and gets them happening. Now, talking to young people and looking at even studies that, in terms of inventorying or interviewing young people about how they want their learning to look, it appears that they want their learning to use, they use the same words as we just used, that they want their learning to be collaborative. They want to participate as learners. They want the customized, individual approach. They want 24/7 access to what they're working on. They want it to be relevant to their lives. They want to play a leadership role as learners. They want to have some kind of global interaction, citizenry in these projects. So what I found over my decade or so of working with schools with filmmaking is that filmmaking actually encompasses all of these skills. In terms of the learning and innovation skills, the critical thinking, problem solving, all these creativity, innovation, that whole column there, I'm not going to read them all out to you again, but this idea that the filmmaking process, and that's what I'm interested in, is the filmmaking process in the classroom and in learning has embedded in it all these fantastic opportunities to develop and to give chances for these skills to have experimentation and to be nourished and to eventually flourish. So in this presentation, we're going to get into, of course, some of that. And all these skills that have been outlined in the 21st Century Partnership Skills documents, they actually correlate to filmmaking. And in fact, in one of the chapters in my book looks at 21st century skills as outlined by the P21 group and how each of those skill outcomes actually has a correlation within the filmmaking process. And if you don't believe me, you can read it. There's a 16-page PDF document on my website, The Director in the Classroom, under the Director of Book section that you can download for free, and just see at every step of the way how the skills can correlate to the filmmaking process, or vice versa, how the filmmaking process correlates to the development of skills, and a whole wide range of skills, not just the academic skills in terms of the knowledge learning, but important skills in terms of collaboration, working with groups, finding consensus, being flexible, overcoming obstacles, these real practical skills. So lots of fun reading ahead if you like. 16 pages, yum. Okay, next, filmmaking. What I found, again, is also this way to deliver a learning environment that students are hungry for. In other words, filmmaking creates these environments for learning that kids are asking for. The idea that they want to have rich technology, they want to be part of a global citizenry, they want to play a leadership role in their learning, they want to have customized learning, they want to participate in real things and collaborate in groups with both people in the school and around the world. So these learning environments called filmmaking provides an arena for developing skills, but it also provides this arena in a way that students are asking for. And so I think that's what the really interesting connection is between, for filmmaking and learning. So ultimately, students, I believe, from my experience, just want to communicate with others. There's this need to communicate with others. Students want to ask questions. They want to create things, real things. They want to work on relevant and meaningful work. They want to have their voices heard. So it sounds to me like really it's about wanting to be human. And this is what interests me, is this idea that we can give them opportunities to be human and explore their humanness in these filmmaking projects. So in this presentation, what I want to explore, again, like I said, is this connection between filmmaking and learning, and specifically, why you might look at considering filmmaking in the classroom as a tool towards global awareness. And then also look at the filmmaking process itself, from idea to presentation. And then let's see how it translates at every step as these series of rich opportunities for learning, whether you're creating personal videos, group videos, or collaboration videos between schools. And perhaps most importantly, to explore along the way how using cameras in the classroom enables students to discover their own connections to community, to family, and to their self. In other words, what I would like to explore is how do video projects matter? How can we make them matter more? All right, so let's just ask this question as well, which is video production in the classroom. Very simply, are you an A, a B, or a C? Have you not started video yet? Have you got a little bit of experience, or are you always doing this kind of thing? Let's just see some A, B's, and C's on the list there. A little bit of everything, some B's, some A's. Wonderful. Okay, so a varied experience. Well, like I said, I'm no expert, so things keep changing. But what I'd like to do is look at this. So we'll start with the word filmmaking. Now, in the 10 or 12 years, whatever, I've been working with schools, I use the word filmmaking. And people ask, why do you use the word filmmaking when really what we're doing is working with digital video here? And I guess I use the word filmmaking for two reasons. One, there's a history around filmmaking, and that history is that for over 100 years, people have picked up a camera to ask questions and then use the camera or the act of making a film to answer or to at least explore that question. So filmmaking comes with it a history of people who investigate their world through a lens. And I like to share that with students so that they are inspired to continue as people who ask questions about the world. Filmmaking also is comprised of two words, film and making. And again, this is a reminder of how we learn, this idea of constructing knowledge, that we make learning, we make films. We make films by putting together things that we collect, images, sounds, voiceovers, titles, sequences. They're all put together and they construct a new thing. And isn't that really how learning happens, through the acquisition of different things that we experience, different ideas, projects that we uncover, and bring it to something new? So I talk about filmmaking for that purpose. Of course, we use digital video because it's so accessible. And so around the world, teachers have been using now video to help their students create and explore their subject areas by making documentaries. They create dramas, beautiful short dramas, long dramas. I've seen feature films, I've seen 1-minute videos done in schools. Public service announcements are very popular. I think also because the public service announcements, let's go back there, this idea that they have an audience, a real audience, either on television or through the web, of what they're advocating for. Commercials, what a great way to look at how media tries to sell us things, or how media does sell us things, I guess. And they look at how do you create arguments with media. So teachers are getting kids to create commercials with video. And I've seen, and I have worked with teachers from K to 16. I've worked with kindergarten teachers on video projects and up to university level. Again, this idea of how do we bring in filmmaking to help students explore their content in new and engaging and meaningful ways. So it really has a place for all educators to consider to incorporate into the learning. Now, I find that filmmaking is this great tool for learning. It's extremely fun. Kids love getting their hands on it. Extremely engaging. As they move their hand around, as they create choices, they see the results right away. It leads to experimentation. Because of the cost of the hard drives or the tapes in the old days was so little, that you could try different things, which was really a great sort of way to approach it, to keep trying different things. And I found in my experience that when students have a camera in their hand, there's a different level of responsibility or a different level of questioning that comes along with it. And so the camera can really be a powerful tool for discovering the world around them through this lens. It's like they're given permission or something through this camera to go deeper than they normally would just in a regular conversation. In terms of communication skills, and we're going to go down this, in detail later, but just overall, this idea of oral communication skills, whether it's at the pitching stage or describing the project, filmmaking is a great, way to develop oral communication skills, to develop visual communication skills in this very visual world that we live in. And believe it or not, a lot of written skills are embedded in the making of this thing that we call video. Now, also, filmmaking, I found, is amazing to develop these thinking skills, this idea of working through processes, working through these intangible ideas and bringing them to life. This idea of solving problems of both how do we make our film, how do we approach the film, how do we solve real obstacles of either time or resources or materials we have to find. And just getting kids used to this idea that problems are out there, problems can be solved, and that's fine. You develop the skill of being a person who solves problems. And the creativity that comes with both approaching it from a creative thing in terms of, as an artist, what I'm trying to say with my film, but also the creativity again in problem solving, that in fact problem solving is creativity. And for self-esteem, I've noticed delightedly many times the joy that kids have when they see their finished work up on the big screen of a theater or on a TV set in their school or projected for their classroom or on a DVD that they take home to their parents. So this incredible feeling of that I am a person who can do this. I've taken something which does not exist, I've made it real, I've shared it, and just that empowerment that I can do these things, I can bring things to life. I think that's a very powerful skill and feeling to impart. There's this awareness of community that can be created through, again, well-designed projects in a film project. And you ladies from Yellowknife, it'd be fun to talk to you more later about this, because I think this is where you're going with this idea of cultural projects in your community. So that's exactly the direction I love, this idea of how do we use the cameras and videos to point students towards what's happening in our own community. And this idea of our own family, to get an awareness of where we are from as citizens, as people. And ultimately our awareness to self, who we are as humans in this crazy world we live in. And to look at social issues, both here and abroad, and to again point the camera towards those. Ultimately, these are all about creating bridges to life and learning outside the classroom, all these projects. So, and one of my favorite things these days is helping to look at and design video collaborations. So this idea of video collaborations between schools and between classrooms around the world that then invite students to work with other students in new ways. Sometimes it's just about as simple as, we'll do a video about where we live, and then you do a video where you live, and we'll exchange videos, which is a great start. But I think more and more now what I'm seeing and what students want to be part of is much more of a collaborative investigation of the world, where they might share a Google Doc, they might share a storyboard, they might share, of course, through a Skype session, ideas of what they want to explore collectively on both sides of the water. And so this idea of investigation is really, I think, very interesting, this idea of thoroughly understanding the subject matter, because you have to communicate it to yourself, to your own group in your school, to groups around the world. And I think we're going to see a huge sort of explosion of video collaborations happening over the next 2 or 3 years in schools. And I know even for myself, on our website, we now have an area just about video collaboration that we're now asking people, great, if you have a project idea, put it in and we'll post it and we'll share it. I know, Lucy, on your GEC site, there's a collaboration database as well, so people can post in multiple places and hook people up. That was fantastic. And I like the idea that video collaborations are going to invite students to consider that people around the world have different perspectives, that they have a perspective themselves in that classroom, and that by listening to others, they have a different perspective is possible or even exists in another country. I think that's really going to be powerful and critical for citizens of this world over the next couple of decades, is to understand that the world has different perspectives. There's no right perspective, there's varied perspectives. And for us to be able to grow up citizens in that environment, I think is going to be a huge benefit to all countries. This idea of developing empathy for each other as citizens of this world, by working together and seeing each other struggling with the same questions, I think is going to be powerful for students to graduate with the skills. this idea of communication that, like we said earlier, the importance of oral, visual, written communication, yes, but this idea of really being able to communicate your ideas, especially if you have to interact in different languages or in foreign languages or second languages with each other. So again, all of this is about really articulating or going into how do we articulate really clearly what we're trying to say with each other. And then hopefully this leads to an understanding of the subject we are trying to explore together, an understanding of who we are as people doing this investigation, and hopefully this recognition that, or this understanding, I guess, further of who we are as people in this global puzzle and what role we are playing to problem solve real world issues. It's all very exciting. So, for example, let's just go back here. Okay. So, for example, yesterday morning I was in a high school here in Canada. This is grade 10, 11, 12, and they wanted me to extend an invitation to you in your community that they're looking for schools to work with. They want to look at this idea of food awareness and action. So, for example, in our community, which is a agricultural sort of community in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, there's a lot of plentiful food supply, but there still are issues of where is our food supply coming from? What about food safety? What about rising prices in transportation? How's that going to affect food availability? What kind of food choices do we have? In this photograph here, there's experts in our community who work with wild food. So these people are gathering wild greens, which are served at local restaurants. And how do we interview these people and share these stories of the kind of food that revolves around our communities? And then take those stories and move people to action, whether it's about incorporating more local foods into their diet, but being more aware of the food choices they make at the grocery store or in the restaurant or for their home. So in other words, these high school students want to collaborate with other schools to look at solving what is both a regional but probably a global question, which is food supply. And this food, which connects us all, is this bridge towards that. So on one note, if you would like to participate in this, send me an email about this, and I'll connect you with the teachers on that project. But just regardless of the specific project, just to consider how fantastic it would be to join classrooms together, more than one even, to collaborate on these real-world issues, so that students who participate in that can see that their time in a classroom, their time behind a desk, has meaning and purpose beyond the evaluation mark. That's where I started getting excited, as you could probably tell by me speaking really quickly now. Okay, I want to look at 3 different approaches to filmmaking in the classroom. This idea that there's the personal, and actually I must say that I hope all students get a chance to do all 3 kinds of filmmaking in their time at school. So, at the personal level, it's about, who am I? This idea, let's give kids chances to explore the question, who am I? And their relationship with themselves. So, great examples through digital storytelling where kids write a narrative and then illustrate it with images or with video, which is fantastic. And even I'll show you a project in a bit that explains this. But at the bigger level, this idea of group investigations, this question of who am I as a part of a group. And this is where a group of 4 or 5 or 6 kids in a classroom make a film together. But also this idea of the global, these video collaborations, like we said, for the student, who am I as part of this world? This is very interesting, I think, to give kids these 3 different perspectives of exploration through media creating and through filmmaking and collaborations. 3 different kind of lenses to look at the same world they live in. So, for example, in Marco Torres, who's a fantastic teacher from California, and you've probably heard of him. He does a lot of work with filmmaking. But one of his early projects that I saw is this one here, and unfortunately just a slide, but not the actual video. But in it, and this is an old project, and it actually didn't even use very much video, just used PowerPoint. But he invited the students to, instead of doing a 5-page essay on Mexican history and American history, to do a 5-minute video about their family's history, and then align that to a timeline of the American and Mexican history timelines. So the students researched where they were from, the birth dates, the birth towns of their relatives, and produced these short little videos. So when I saw it, I thought, how wonderful that the students were invited to look at history, but through their family perspective. And then also in that, the byproduct, to see that they came from somewhere. In other words, that there's a lineage here, that their mother and father came from somewhere, that their grandparents came from somewhere, that they are actually part of something. And so I love how Marco integrated both this personal lens and laid it across a table of learning, which meets outcomes and all the kind of learning criteria that he as a teacher had to meet. But he did it through this personal lens. Yay, Marco. Now, at the group level, one of the projects that we love doing, what I love working with schools on, is this idea of preserving your culture. And so we've done this with schools up in Alaska and in California and around North America and bits and places of Europe and such. And information on this and free kind of ideas and resources on our website too. So I encourage you to just go check it out. So the essence of preserving your culture is simply to invite students to create a portrait of time through their student filmmaking project. So, for example, here in British Columbia, recently we did a project with some First Nations youth who interviewed their elders about their place where they lived. The place names, their food, geography, customs, culture. But it wasn't just kind of let's go out and film some elders project. It always starts with an invitation. And the invitation is, or in this case, the problem of, our elders have our stories. Our elders die each year. How do we keep those stories for our own children? In other words, you as students who will have children and grandchildren in 20 or 40 years, who will tell them these stories? So the question we pose to them is, would you like to be people who create a library of student-created videos that will capture some of these stories and make them available for future generations? So of course the kids want to do this, because right away it's not something which is going to be handed in on Friday. This is something that's like a 20, 30, 40-year out project. So it has real meaning and value in the community for both the youth, the elder, and people who are unborn yet. And in these 5-minute videos that these kids produce, or 10-minute videos, they take the original interview, they then add images, sound, museum artifacts, maps, whatever might best illustrate what that elder is speaking about, and then they create that as a 5-minute or 10-minute video piece, which then is shown on a website or a DVD or at a festival, etc. But then what we also suggest is that they take that original 1 hour or half hour, whatever it is long, interview, unedited, and then archive that in various places. In this way, at the museum or at the school or at the families, even with the family, to have a place where it can be archived. And so the idea is that, they may use a few minutes in the interview this year, but maybe someone in a few years might find a different part fascinating, and so they would use that in their investigation. So that's an example of this idea of, creating video projects as a group that, yes, can fulfill sort of learning outcomes that deal with, culture and learning and language arts and technology and place and geography and such, but more importantly, it's really about building or designing projects that create bridges between youth and elders, between people in the community, provides a real purpose, provides real skills in terms of collaboration and group work, and again, ultimately has meaningful work attached to the process of learning. So also in this idea of video collaboration, and unfortunately I have the video here, and I'll move on for things of time, but in essence, here it is. There's a school in Italy, a school in Romania, and as part of the eTwinning group in Europe, they collaborated on a series of math videos. And I actually gained links to this video on my website under the Ideas section, under Math. And so these two schools collaborated using documents online to develop storyboards and scripts and outlines on ways to look at math videos. So some math videos were about kids doing homework together, and there was like dramas that were recreated. And some math videos were recreating great moments in math history. And some math videos were about, for example, Pythagoras explaining his theorems to students on the beach of Italy, which is actually filmed on the beach of Italy because that's where they were from. So in this, because of the shorter time on this presentation, I encourage you to check out the idea section on the website and watch these math collaborations, just to show you this idea of schools getting together to create these video collaborations, even on math subjects, which is fantastic. So yeah, there's another shot from another project. This is what the Romanian group did. The drama of these two girls helping each other in the process of explaining math to each other. All right, and so yes, and like I said, this idea of video collaborations to explore math, science, English, history, whatever, But ultimately, what really would get me excited is to see a lot more video collaborations tied into real-world problem solving, or real problem sort of awareness like this, the food issues here. So let's see what you guys come up with. I'm really eager to help you out with that. Now, whether it's a personal, group, or collaborative filmmaking, there's the same process which happens. And that process is really having this idea and taking the idea into a plan and making that plan into action and turning that action into a bunch of film that you look at and edit and analyze, and then eventually showing that and presenting it to the world. So regardless if it's a short film or a long film, there's still that 5 steps that remain: idea, plan, action, edit, and present. And what's exciting for me is the fact that when students look at this process, they can then apply this to other areas of their life. If you wanted to write a book, you would go through the same steps. You'd have an idea for a book, you would plan the book, you would put into action, you would revise it, you would show the book to someone. If you want to build a house, the same thing. So getting kids familiar with this process is what I guess interests me the most about filmmaking in the classroom. We go into this idea of idea. First of all, it's about developing ideas, and so this idea of starting with the purpose. What is the purpose of making our film? What do we want to explore? What do we want to bring awareness to? These are the kind of things I love to brainstorm with students when we begin a project. This idea of what interests them about this subject. And what questions do we want to explore? Remember, we don't have to necessarily answer questions, but this idea of how do we explore them. And then I like to recommend journals or keeping binders that allow them to kind of keep their thoughts on that particular subject and to refer to them throughout the project. And then maybe to ask, hey, who's going to be the audience for this? Is it going to be shown in our classroom, or is it for our community, or can we show it on a television station, festivals? If it's particularly, let's say it's about water, for example, or water conservation, can it be shown at City Hall? In other words, to just think about where this might end up going. There's questions of time to consider, like how long do we want the project to be, and how much time do we even have to work on it? And then assessment questions, like how are we going to assess it? And then not just the assessment of the rubrics, let's say, of the clarity of the actual finished piece, but the deliverables. By deliverables, I mean, what other things do you get assessed on besides the actual finished video? And for example, I like to recommend that storyboards are part of the deliverables, that the outline is part of the deliverables, that the research notes, that the planning documents, the research, that there's so much that goes into making a film before you actually pick up a camera, that these are all things that are possible sort of assessment attached to them, depending on how you want to structure your projects. And then finally, what kind of resources are there in our classroom or in our school that are going to help you be successful with making your film? And that ideas change. So as we start exploring something, naturally as filmmakers or as humans, our ideas change. So let's see what possibilities we have to kind of evolve this project. And that's completely natural. And I see a lot of students who have problems with the whole idea of change because, we don't usually encourage change. So they get stuck on things. And so we like to show them, for example, DVDs where they have like director's cut versions. So you can say, hey, look, directors actually change their ideas all the time. So you can too. It's like permission. Okay, and then we get into pitching. And this is really about developing oral communication skills. So pitching is about really saying what your film is about in 1 minute, or 2 minutes. And just gives kids a chance to stand up and tell them, the classroom, what the film's about. So developing both, speaking and listening skills as audience members and as presenters, which is, very valuable in the world we live in. They'll probably be doing more speaking and listening they'll be doing than, reading or writing, so let's get used to it. When you pitch someone your film idea, really they are the first audience for your film. And by that I mean, if you pitch your film and that person falls asleep, you know that you have a problem with your pitch and possibly a problem with your film. So the first audience gives you clues about how to enhance or create or develop your film even further, about constantly refining it. And of course, ideas keep changing. This is part of it. And then the idea stays screenwriting, but it's about developing writing skills. So here's a script from a film that my wife and I did called Smoke a few years ago. So Linda writes the script, and there's a line there, this young boy looks through the bus window at the large smokestack on top. And so when we're out filming, this becomes a final frame from the film. But in order for that final frame to get there, it had to start with it being envisioned as a script. So screenwriting is about developing writing skills and about really asking students to create pictures with words. So it's a fantastic exploration of the language skills and saying, what can we do with language? How do we make it vibrant, and how do we tell a story with it? Now, Steve, I think I'm just waiting for some more slides to load, if that's true. No?
So I've done a good
Okay,
job
there we go.
keeping up, but I fell just a little bit behind here, so give me 1 second. There was some memory error. I'm just going to move your slide here. Okay, so you should be able to click forward, and I'm trying to keep up, so if you run into a blank again, I'm working on it.
Hey, let's have a hands up for Steve, who's keeping the slides flowing on this presentation. Thank you, Steve. All right, we have friends. Okay, so what we were talking about before was this idea that the screenwriting portion of the developing the idea is a way to develop these beautiful language and writing skills. And really, it's about creating these pictures with words, which is fantastic. The next portion of the filmmaking process is the idea of planning. And so storyboards is really a critical part, I believe, and a lot of people have already talked about storyboards being an essential part of making a film. I think it's because it's about developing visual skills and the ability to both, articulate your idea in terms of pictures and to understand what people are thinking in terms of pictures. So, there we go. So, we'll just wait for one more slide here.
So I'm running into a memory error, and I'd like to take a 1-minute break. If you're willing to do a 1-minute Q&A, I'm going to go to the web tour, back to the whiteboard, and see if it clears the memory. We only have 2 slides in the whiteboard at this time, but the memory hasn't cleared it. If anybody is a Illuminator Blackboard expert and knows more than I do, please feel free to put a note in the chat. I'll take a second now if I can.
Okay, so thank you, Steve, for working on the slides, and we'll figure out how to get it flowing. So the visual, and part of I was going to mention too that the thing about storyboarding, and again on the website there's information about storyboarding, and there's forums you can download as well on storyboard forums and such. And one of the great resources for storyboards is comic books. So when we get back with Steve, we'll look at some comic book examples. But for now, and I haven't really been doing a great job of watching the questions in the chat room, but I promise to look at all of this when it's over and answer any questions I didn't get to live and respond to you. If you have an email, of course, I know who to respond to. But yes, any immediate questions before we wait?
So Nikos, I'm not having success. Would you be willing to pull this up in Keynote and do an app share from this point forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just organize that.
Again, I apologize. We only have 3 slides in the whiteboard, but it's not allowing me to upload anymore. I'm guessing it's a memory error.
All right, so I'm going to go to Tools, Application Sharing, I believe.
Yes, or you can click on the middle icon above the whiteboard. It does the same thing. So we are seeing your screen.
Okay, are you seeing the notes and the screen, or just the slide?
It's refreshing for me, but I'm currently seeing slide number 51.
Okay. And I'm just going to Okay, and is there a lot of white space on the bottom, Steve, or is it a slide filling the screen?
There is a lot of white space on the bottom, but it is still visible, and I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Okay. Hang on, I got a plan.
Looks better.
You good?
Yes, and just be aware that these take a little bit longer to refresh.
Okay. I'll speak slowly. No, I won't. Okay, comic books. So comic books are this fantastic resource for talking about storyboards with your students. So I encourage you to invite them to bring in some comic books to the classroom and to look at how storyboards or how comic books are directed, basically. Like if you look at this comic book here, there's a series of panels. They have different angles, different heights, different lighting that are used to tell this story. And this panel here, for example, you see there, and the first here is the big panel here. On this panel, you see there's this boy who's dropping his books on the hall floor, and you're wondering, why did this boy drop his books? In the second panel, you see that there's two guys pushed him. So, would it have made a difference if we saw the two guys first and then see the guy fall down? And I think it would. I think you wouldn't be asking the question, why did he fall? So in other words, how you introduce visual images has a logical sequence attached to it. And just to even bring up this point with kids, I think would be fun to say that there's a order to how you're going to lay out your visual images in your film. There's no right or wrong order, but just to be aware that you can make choices about that order. So I think comic books are a great tool for talking about the choices you can make when you actually bring up your camera and it's time to film. Okay. Now, we're going to go slowly here. This idea that storyboards are also a point to look at this idea of creativity, both in terms of the artwork, how do you actually draw or create storyboards, but also don't get hung up on the fact that the storyboards need to be these really beautiful works of art. Because in fact, I've seen storyboards by students that have been beautiful works of art that have conveyed very little information that is useful, and I've seen stickmen that have been produced that have been much more effective for a group to actually succeed in making their film. So I like to remind kids, don't get hung up on it being a work of art. What you're trying to do is convey information using a picture. Now, this next part is this idea of breakdowns. So filmmaking is asking a lot of questions. And where is this going to take place? Who is going to be involved? What time is it going to happen? What cameras do we need? All these kind of things. And so the breakdowns is about going through the script and the storyboards and just kind of looking at the resources that are needed. And what do we need, like I said, to make our idea a success. And so what I like about this is that for students, it gives them a chance to kind of look at this kind of intangibles of what they need. All right. And then this idea of schedules and budgets, this idea of looking at what kind of list exactly do we need. The call sheet is an example of asking the question, what do you plan to do? And again, all this is on the website, so I'm not going to go into huge detail on this. If you're interested, you can find out call sheets and such there. The interesting thing is that when we get into filming, we have the script, we have the shot list, we have the storyboard, but then we've got this paradox, which is that we prepared for this moment, and yet we need to be open to actually risk taking chances on things and to try things that we haven't planned to do. And I found that's a really crucial moment for kids when they're on the field filming, is to be able to try things that comes to them so they can learn to trust their intuition on things. I love seeing that part. Editing is about this importing of footage and this idea of analyzing and seeing what interests you and this relevance of this material. So the editing is a part too for kids to get experience in the synthesis of these images. And guess what? Ideas change again. Ideas change because, we as humans change our ideas the more we learn about things. And so the finished film, the edited film, can be certainly different than what you started off with. During the publicity time, press kits I recommend, because that way kids can put together synopses of what they're doing, interviews, etc. Premiere in the classroom. A time to reflect with the mentors. A time for them to become mentors themselves and to ask the question, what do I want to do next? So these are the 5 phases of filmmaking. And again, these days, 48 hours every minute are uploaded on YouTube, a video. So the thing is, we live in this collaborative video world right now where students and adults alike are pumping up a lot of video on YouTube and other sources to share ideas and etc. So it's not like we're inventing something new here. We're just working within an environment that people are already living in. 3 billion videos are watched every day on YouTube. We are a video watching craziness is what we are. And 2 billion more on Facebook, if you can believe it. So like billions of videos. So to again create these landscapes for students to produce content in this world just makes so much sense. 40% of teenagers, I think, have digital video cameras, and I asked the group yesterday at the high school if they uploaded information. They said yes, about half of them did. Although this study by the Kids at Play group said only 25% did, and about 35% have watched something online. But the group yesterday was about 100% online. Anyways, regardless of the facts, it's a very digital world that we live in, and so filmmaking in the classroom is an opportunity for students to participate in this language that makes so much sense to them and more to us as well. I believe that the skills that are embedded throughout the filmmaking process are transferable to a student's life, both in the classroom and beyond. And so both in terms of skills and the collaboration skills, etc., are very rich. I also think that the design of the projects are both meaningful to the students, the community, and to the world at large. And so, I encourage you to enhance, grow more of these projects. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to speak quickly, but I'm also going to speak slowly too, if I can, so I can get a few questions in as well. So, for all of those reasons, the development of skills, the development of proficiencies that will help them succeed in business and life, etc. This is why I get excited about when teachers, do their best to bring in film projects, and despite the obstacles of time and resources, see for themselves just how rewarding it is for themselves and for the students. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that, and looking forward to hearing from stories that are underway and that are being completed, and see how we can help this idea spread to more classrooms. I'm going to be in Europe next week at the Media and Learning Conference in Brussels, so if any of you are in Europe, come by for coffee. And if you're not in Brussels, you can still pop by the Directing the Classroom website, the directingtheclassroom.com, and as I mentioned, a whole bunch of great free resources. It's like a Ning site, so just sign up for free and you're in, and meet members from around the world who are all contributing to build resources to advocate meaningful youth media. The PDF that I talked about that correlates to 21st century skills with filmmaking, which I find has been a great resource for people who are writing grants and want to kind of explain to school boards and funders, etc., about why filmmaking should be in 21st century classrooms. A lot of people are using this as an example of, of the correlation and why it should be there. So I invite you to take that resource and comment on it as you wish. And finally, if you have any further thoughts on other days, give us a shout. Gee, that was fast, Steve and Lucy. Sorry.
Yes, fast and terrific.
Thank you very much for your time.
You want to take any questions? Okay, so if you have a question for Nikos, please raise your hand. It's the hand icon in the participant window. It's the third one over. Or you can put your question in the chat. If you place the question in the chat, I'm afraid it slipped by. You probably haven't seen it, so please post it again. And I am using the applause icon, which is underneath the smiley face, to applaud. So Peggy asks, how do you deal with permissions to post the student videos online?
That's a great question, and I think it varies from school to school. I think two things. One is usually we start by suggesting to the teachers that they have, of course, some kind of media release within the classroom. In other words, what is their policy within that one classroom of kids that can be photographed? And then the second thing is, within that school district, is there a policy on video online of kids? And I would say most ones don't have a formal policy, so it's still quite gray. It's still a gray area, and I can't really give any kind of legal advice on it. All I can say is this idea of a media release form is probably the closest thing we have at this point, which is to say, that the parents are fine with the kids being involved with the project, and then in that document, you can then state that it may be used online. Do you have a media release form example on your site? If not, I'm going to put one there. I have one in the book that's general media release, not one that talks about the web. So thank you for reminding me that I should have it. That's what it's about, just figuring out what resources we need and get them out there. So thank you.
We probably have time for one more question before we let you go to the next set of sessions. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat or raise your hand using that third icon over the hand icon in the participant window. Dimitri asks, are you concerned with copyright issues? Maybe he's asking you or Peggy, I can't tell.
Well, if I can speak to copyright, I think copyright's a great opportunity because what I've said to kids, for example, one of the most popular things with kids is they're saying, we want to use this music by, Adele in our music video. And so we explained that there's a copyright attached to it. And so we don't have, unless we have permission, we can't show it in a film festival or, in the public. We can show it maybe in our classroom, but it doesn't really have an audience outside of here if it has rights attached to it. So that leads into a whole discussion of copyright and rights. But what it can also do is then invite students to create their own music. So using GarageBand or other music producing software, we have a problem, which is we can't use that music. How do we solve it? We create our own music. Now, if you're not feeling comfortable with creating your own music in GarageBand, do you know of musicians? Are there bands in your community who have a CD or that you can approach and say, can we use your music? Or, in some cases, students will actually send requests to real-life big artists and actually get permission. I remember there's a class in Canada which did this with Sarah McLachlan a few years ago to use one of her songs for a video they did, and she loved the video the kids made and gave her permission. So imagine the empowerment that those kids felt, dealing with a real-life person like her. So I think obstacles of copyright are opportunities.
Looks like a final question from Richard. Do you use collaborative online production or editing tools, or just cloud storage?
This is a great question. I think Google Docs is kind of a very simple, cheap way to have collaborative scripts and such, and even storyboards. We actually were developing a piece on our website that is a collaborative production studio for students. So if anyone's interested in that, I could get them information on that. But I think we're just starting to see now, and there is a list of collaborative tools that we're building on the site as well that is listing what classrooms are using to work on documents together, to work on storyboards, to work on production schedules, etc. together. Now you can also edit the videos in each classroom independently and then mash them together. Or there's more and more websites that are coming where you can actually upload the video to a site and then collaborate on the video editing online. So I think we're going to see new things there as well.
Thank you, Nikos. We have to stop there. I'm clapping for you again. I hover over the smiley face and go down to the applause button. That was terrific and a lot of great comments and appreciation in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to all. Look forward to seeing you again on the e-line or email lines. And have a great Global Education Conference 2011. Yay!
You are terrific.